Hey, does this seem like fun to you? If it does, you'd be correct, as it is. If you said no, then there is zero reason as to why you should buy this game. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next one. Hmm? Longer? Why? There's not much more to say, to be honest. Algorithm? YouTube money? I've got nothing better to do anyways. Okay, fair enough, I'll give it a try. I never really beforehand think, yeah, I'm gonna make a review. It comes more naturally whenever I play something that I think this is really good or wow, this really sucks. And then I want to share these thoughts with the world to see if others agree or find it helpful. When I was playing this game, I didn't think anything at all. Is that even a good thing, you may wonder? Well, yeah, it is. Because it's so much fun that I just completely lost track of time. I honestly can't remember the last time that happened. For me, only two games really make me lose track of time. The typical, holy shit, there's so much lore, content and stuff to unpack here, where do I even start? And whoa, the gameplay is so addictive and fluid that I want to keep doing this for the remainder of my life type of games. Midnight Fight Express is the latter. In a world where a cat simulator that you can finish in under 4 hours ends up on most people's Game of the Year list, I can't imagine how hard it must be to be a game developer. AAA studios are so scared people think their shit is boring, they mindlessly add stuff like 50 different map markers or filler up dialogue options just so that they can sell their game on the premise of, but it will take you 4 years to finish, that's good, right? Right?
Yes, but actually no.
I've been playing games since the age of 6, and after all of these years, the games that stood out the most are the ones that tried something unique, but more importantly, fully committed to their concept. Instead of giving you a bunch of watered down content, one even more boring than the other, they were like, let's just do one thing, flawlessly, and see if people like it or not. Instead of banging 10 weak 4s, you get one perfect 10. Instead of having 10 Bud Lights, you get one perfect old fashioned. If my analogies haven't made sense to you yet, don't worry, as they probably never will. But the point I'm trying to make is that Midnight Fight Express tries to make you feel like a badass, and they nailed it. So, what's the deal? You wake up as a supposedly sleeper agent with amnesia who gets FedEx a drone to spy on his neighbors, who's going to help him fight crime and take down the bad guys, or as the game calls them, bozos. This fighting is done via levels, in which the game slowly but surely adds new enemy types. Don't take the last part too seriously though, as enemies like bulky bozos, plague bearers, pirates, warriors, and hoods are all the same character but reskinned in like 7 different ways throughout the game. And the same goes for many different enemy types as well. After finishing a level, you get a score, depending on how fast you were and how much damage you've done. As someone who always comes too fast and is notorious for doing little damage, this system immediately clicked with me. Things like combos and killing people with a bit of variety add a lot of score to your end result, this being a grade ranging from D+ to an S tier. Because the levels are short and constantly action-packed, you constantly feel the urge to restart and to try and improve on your score. You get your ass kicked in your first couple of attempts, but when you finally get an S tier, storming through everyone, it feels very satisfying. To me personally, ranking systems in games like Metal Gear or Dishonored often had me grinding my tears. Gears. As the second I got detected or the slightest mishap occurred, I wanted to quick load or restart everything just for that rating. Here you can still get the shit kicked out of you, but it doesn't automatically mean you will get a low rating. So experimentation and aggressive approaches actually get rewarded. Difficulty settings are customizable to fit your needs, from the amount of health you get to how aggressive the AI is. Worth noting is also that the game ran flawlessly without frame drops whatsoever. Something else that's customizable is your entire character, ranging from body and face tattoos to clothing and headgear. To top it off, bonus points in my book for being able to skip dialogue and cutscenes on replays so that you can make your attempts even faster. The developer respects your time, made sure none of that time was wasted. Going back to these levels later on is not only recommended, but also kinda heavily forced upon you by the game, as some challenges like throwing people over railings is gonna be kinda difficult when you're nowhere near the ability that unlocks throwing yet. So yeah, there's a skill tree, and this one is actually pretty good. Every skill adds a different element to the game and changes up your gameplay ever so slightly. The skill tree is worthless though if the gameplay sucks, but unlike your ex-girlfriend, the combat here doesn't suck whatsoever. The impact of every kick, shove, punch and throw is felt through the screen. You know the combat in the game is good whenever you start talking to yourself while playing it. This dude is kinda kicking my ass. Damn! Something which also really surprised me is how, even at the later stages of the game, I was still seeing new animations and moves. The combat system is very elaborate. And yeah, sure, it's a beat 'em up, they're supposed to have nice combat, but first of all, not all of them do, and second of all, this one just really clicked with me. You go from fighting to chases to cutscenes, which made sure the gameplay didn't cut still too quick. Mission setup and dialogue wise, there's one mission that just completely breaks the fourth wall. I want to talk about it, but it would spoil too much I guess, but it's essentially the developer throwing as many references about the current gaming market into one mission as possible. From high-stake investors forcing teams to rush a game, to movie and sideshow references thrown in between. As you might have noticed, there's no spoken dialogue, it's all just text on screen, but it still made me laugh my ass off. It was great. The dialogue in general is just really good. Very strong writing all around, with a bunch of humor and banter between characters thrown in between. There are actually multiple references to famous movies, also famous video game scenes. If the humor in games like Wasteland and New Vegas are your kind of thing, I can guarantee you get a chuckle out of this game here and there. You could tell there was a budget, and instead of wasting a part of it on voice actors, the developer put everything into the combat, which was a perfect decision. On top of that, the soundtrack is a straight up banger, just so good, undescribably good. If I made you curious, check it out for yourself or give it a buy via the Steam page. To summarize what we've got till now, the game has a crap load of content, customization and level diversity, with fun, lifelike characters and dialogue and amazing music. If all of the things you've heard until now excite you and make you think, looks fucking sick, I'm gonna buy this game, well, that's great. In that case, you can close this video and stop watching. No, really. You can go. You're still here? Alright. Here comes the bad news. If you've listened to my rambling until now, this game would be a straight up 10 out of 10. With all of that being said, is it a 10 out of 10? No. As a matter of fact, once you've crossed around the halfway point, it almost becomes kinda bad, as some things are really holding it back, almost kinda ruining it. There are small bugs here and there. One that forced me to quit the game as the leaderboards wouldn't go away no matter what I tried. Couldn't find anything about it online, so that looked like just a one-time problem. Enemies get stuck in door frames. You can get stuck in door frames, obviously leading to unwanted damage or even death. Sometimes the hitboxes can be a bit funky, which is obviously a huge problem in a game about fighting and countering at just the right moment. Not only enemies hitting you, but also people teleporting across the room to hit you. Some of the checkpoints are horrendous. You can completely turn checkpoints off in the menu, but that's not really a fix, is it? And with horrendous, I mean that you die, respawn, and immediately get hit by something with like 0.2 seconds to spare. You can remap all of the keys and buttons to your liking, however I changed the roll and the pickup items button around, and ever since, whenever I'm being grappled and I try to do a quick time event, nothing happens. Only the first time I press R1 registers, so there's some issues there as well. At first I thought it was because of the button remap that this happened, but then I noticed it in other button prompts as well. And if there's one thing worse than bad hitboxes in a fighting game, it's button input not being registered properly. Sometimes you tackle someone with the idea of beating them on the ground, but even though you press attack, nothing happens, resulting in you just sitting on the poor guy like an experienced hooker. At this point, I was thinking maybe it's a PS5 controller issue, but when I plugged in an Xbox Series X controller, the same thing happened. Then I found out it not only happens on grapples and on tackling, but also while being pulled towards someone with a rope, often resulting in bullshit deaths. The biggest problem I had though wasn't a bug or a glitch, it was one of the core gameplay mechanics, namely the introduction of new guns. Now look, I get it. The dev got scared it would get stale to just use fists, knives, baseball bats, etc. Problem is, it's not. It almost felt like there was a perfect game, the plan was there and executed flawlessly, only to then at the last second have it go to shit with something like, oh but what if this gets boring, and they just decided to chuck some guns in there to spice things up. I especially think that as there's no real counter to them in the entire game, so you just end up rolling around the map trying to avoid the one enemy with a gun while throwing out a jab or a kick here and there to his buddies. Like, Be honest, what looks like more fun? This? Or this?
Boring.
A use someone as a meat shield option we saw in games such as The Last of Us 2 or Saints Row 2 would have really helped out a lot, as now it just feels awkward. Might have taken the pace out of combat, but at least I wouldn't have to roly-poly my way through every level anymore. Not only that, but enemies with guns feel even more out of place in certain levels, as you're fighting like dock workers or guys in scuba gear only to have a random gang member show up out of nowhere with a gun. This could just be a visual glitch or an inconsistency in the coding, but I think it's because of my funky theory that the developer threw these guys in there at the last possible second. There's plenty of really cool fighting scenes and scenarios in this game, being ruined by the spam of gun violence. I think the best example would be this bar fight scene. I've never in my life played a bad bar fight scene. They're always fun, but then suddenly some fat fuck with 9mm enters and I end up rolling around like a dog whose turd got stuck halfway through his shit taking process. It immediately ruins the experience. The farther into the story you get, the more of a problem this becomes. It's like, ooh, new enemy. I wonder what he's gonna... Of course. Or, wow, this level was really fun. Jumping from platform to platform, another gun inside... Some levels are more shooting than fighting, which shows more of the game having an identity crisis than it being a cool new mechanic they thought would spice things up. It also doesn't help that the gunplay doesn't feel all that great. Lock-ons often don't work and enemies are bullet sponges. It kinda reminded me of that old PS3 title, Dead Nation. People still remember that, right? Right? Guys, I'm 23, stop acting like I'm a boomer. The game really shines whenever there's a few enemies, preferably some with melee weapons, the others not, and one or two big guys to fight. In these instances, it almost feels like you're playing something like Doom Eternal. And yeah, I get it, you might think what the fuck are you on about, but hear me out. Doom was just as much about dissecting a level. It was like a 400 beats per minute puzzle that you were solving. It wasn't mindless waves of enemies that were being thrown at you. You had to approach every enemy differently and use the surroundings and different abilities to make it work. Midnight gets kinda close to that idea, as the environment is highly interactive and you unlock dozens of new skills, but not without flaws. The flaws being the problems I mentioned before, like the long distance weapons, bugs, and weird hitboxes. On top of that, there are invisibility frames, but not for every move, so sometimes your only reward for doing a counter is being hit on the back of the head with nothing that you could have done about it. Thankfully, there's an arena mode, in which you can adjust everything to your liking, from enemy amount to type to weapons to wave amount. And if the combat really clicked with you, I can see most people going back to this game once in a while to just mess around with in this mode. This is just an amazing feature, and one I would like to see in more games that are built around fighting. Unfortunately, if you're completing the story, you are stuck with some questionable level design and enemy types. With all of that being said though, you might have noticed how in this video I've always referred to the development team as the developer, and that was intentional. When I reached the credits, I saw that the developer and lead designer were the same guy. The credits were also really short. I put my controller down, checked my laptop for something, and when I looked back up at my PC, they were already done. So I was like, huh, must be a very small team. Wait, this game was made by one guy? And turns out, yeah, it is. I have no clue how I missed this during research, probably as I kinda jumped in this game blind, but that washes away like 90% of the blame of the bugs and the glitches, in my opinion at least. The way a game is marketed and published, but also the price they ask, should most definitely be included in a review. If a $1 billion AAA studio releases a shit product, most likely with 20 different pre-order versions,
This feels a lot like hell.
the game has to be amazing for me to even consider it as being decent. But if you make an entire game on your own, with a limited budget, without investors or stakeholders dumping money into your firm and doing the marketing for you, and you release it for only $20, I can forgive a few bugs, glitches, and a bit of questionable game design. So, to wrap it up, for the amount of content you're getting, it's an absolute no-brainer to buy. For $20 you get 40 missions jam-packed with action, over 50 different enemy types, funny characters, and tons of replayability. Even though we ended kinda negatively, this is a really good game. Absolutely worth every penny. If you think it's not, or you're still in doubt, just get like 1 month worth of Game Pass. That stuff is $1 or something, and try it out for yourself. I wish I had some sort of fancy YouTuber promo code to give you, bringing the game down from $20 to like 6, but we're not quite there yet. It's a good game, with an amazing start, that wears out its welcome a little bit towards the end, with certain parts of it being really bad, teetering towards just being frustrating. However, with all of the positive things we've discussed, and especially the price, it's 100% worth a try. I can tell a lot of love and care went into this game, from the writing to the story to the fluidity of the gameplay. Now, get out there and start messing people up. I'll leave you with a few spare clips in case you still weren't convinced yet.